Hey everyone, welcome back to Business Book Breakdowns, the podcast where we, break down the best business and self-improvement books so you don't have to.
Exactly.
If you like what you hear today, please like, comment, and subscribe. It helps other people find the show.
Yeah, it really does.
Okay, today we're diving deep into Atomic Habits by James Clear. I mean, this book has become like the go-to for anyone in business, or really anyone who just wants to, step up their game.
But what's the core message? What makes Atomic Habits so, I don't know, sticky?
It's interesting, right? It comes down to this idea, tiny changes, big results. It sounds so simple, but Cleary argues that we tend to overemphasize these huge changes instead of seeing the power of small habits, those things you do day in and day out.
Okay, so like the saying, Rome wasn't built in a day. But how does that work in the real world, especially in business? Things move so fast. Imagine an ice cube, right? You're applying heat, consistent heat, but nothing seems to be happening until you hit 32 degrees. Then, boom, it melts. But it's not like the effort before 32 degrees was useless. It was all leading up to that point. It's what Clear calls the plateau of latent potential.
Oh, I like that.
Habits are the same. We don't always see the impact immediately, but with consistent effort, you break through. And then everyone calls it an overnight success.
Right, the classic overnight success myth. In business, a company suddenly takes off and people think it's magic, but it's usually years of work behind the scenes.
Exactly. And the opposite is true too. Neglect those small changes. Let those bad habits slide. One late email, one missed deadline. It doesn't seem like much, but over time, it adds up.
It's like that saying, death by a thousand paper cuts.
Exactly. Small things, but deadly in the long run.
Yeah, that's a good point for any leader to remember. Success is about consistency, not just those big splashy moments. So how do we tap into those small changes? Clear talks about identity-based habits, this idea that our habits reflect our self-image. How does that play out in business?
It's huge, actually. Think about a leader trying to build a culture of innovation, right? If they see themselves as someone who always plays it safe, it'll be hard to change that culture. Our self-perception can be a real barrier.
So how do you change that self-image? It feels almost impossible, like changing your DNA or something.
Now, it's not easy, but it's doable. It starts with what Clear calls small wins. Take that leader who wants to be more innovative, right? Instead of overhauling everything, they could start with something small, like a 15% time policy, where employees get dedicated time for creative projects. Each time they support one of those projects, they're acting in line with that identity they want to build.
I love that. It's like you're proving to yourself one action at a time that you are that kind of leader. It's much more approachable than some massive transformation.
Mhm.
But how do we make sure those small actions become habits? That's where his 4 laws of behavior change come in, right?
Yeah.
Make it obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying.
Exactly. That's the framework for understanding how habits form, and more importantly, how to build good ones in business and in life.
Okay, let's break those laws down, starting with make it obvious. How can we make the habits we want more obvious, especially in the chaos of running a business? I mean, we can't all design the perfect environment.
You're right, it's not about interior design. It starts with being aware. Clear talks about a habits scorecard. Just a list of your current habits, good and bad. What are you already doing consistently? Once you know that, you can tweak your environment, make the good habits more obvious and the bad ones invisible.
So it's about being intentional about your surroundings, right? Instead of
Yeah.
letting them control you. So what are some ways to do that in a business setting?
It can be as simple as rearranging your office. Like if you're trying to be more mindful, maybe keep your meditation cushion in a visible spot instead of having your phone be the first thing you see. Make the good cues more prominent.
Oh, I see. It's not about willpower then. It's about strategy and design.
Exactly. And that goes for our social environments too.
Right. We've talked about physical spaces, but what about the people we surround ourselves with? How does that play into habits being obvious?
We're so influenced by the people around us, right? If you want to exercise regularly, but all your friends just watch TV, it's going to be tough. But if you're surrounded by people who prioritize fitness, it becomes the norm.
It's like that story in the book about the Polgar sisters, the chess prodigies.
Mm.
Their dad basically engineered their whole environment, their friends, everything to make them chess masters. A little extreme, but a great example.
Totally. Most of us aren't raising chess prodigies, but we pick up habits from the people around us, whether we realize it or not. So surround yourself with people who have the habits you want.
So find your tribe. If you want to be successful in business, Hang out with other entrepreneurs. Want to be healthier? Join a running club or something. Makes sense.
Exactly. Find your people.
This is so important for anyone in business.
Yeah.
The people you work with, the company culture, it all influences your habits.
100%. And this leads us to the next law. Make it attractive.
Okay, make it attractive. That sounds, I don't know, kind of the opposite of like every self-help book that tells you to grind and hustle. How do you make something you should be doing, for success actually appealing?
Yeah, it's not always about forcing yourself. Our brains like pleasure, right? Not pain.
Oh,
So you got to tap into that. Clear talks about temptation bundling, basically pairing something you have to do with something you want to do.
ooh, temptation bundling. Sounds kind of risky, like it could backfire.
It can, for sure, but if you do it right, it's really effective. Say you want to stay updated on industry news, but you always end up on social media. You could bundle those. Only allow yourself to check your favorite feeds while you're listening to a business podcast or reading those articles.
So you're like tricking your brain into connecting something fun with something maybe less fun. Clever. Any other ways to make good habits more, I don't know, enticing, especially in business?
We often forget how motivating it is to actually see your progress. That's where habit tracking comes in.
Like one of those apps or just a checklist?
Exactly. It doesn't have to be fancy. Just the act of tracking, seeing those streaks, checking off boxes, it makes you feel good. Your brain likes progress.
It's like those money jar challenges,
Yeah.
right? Every time you do the thing, you drop in a coin. Seeing it add up, even if it's just pennies, is motivating.
Right. That satisfaction, even if it's small, keeps you going. And remember, we're going for consistency here, not perfection.
Speaking of consistency, we all have those moments where motivation just dips. What do you do then? When you know what you should do, but don't feel like it.
Accountability. Having someone else in the mix, an accountability partner, coach, mentor, it's huge. Harder to skip the gym when you know someone's waiting for you, right?
That's true. There's like external motivation when yours runs out. But what if someone's not into the whole accountability buddy thing? Any tips for like the lone wolves?
Clear talks about habit contracts. Basically, you make a formal commitment, even just write it down. What the habit is, what happens if you don't do it, a reward, a penalty, even just telling people your goal makes it more real.
It's like that Ben Franklin quote, by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. Setting up systems in advance, so when you're not feeling it, the system's already there.
Exactly. And you can still get others involved. In the book, there's that story of Brian Harris, the entrepreneur. He used a habit contract for weight loss. His wife and trainer were involved, with real consequences if he failed.
And it worked. He lost the weight, then set even bigger goals. So this stuff does work. Okay, so we've got make it obvious, make it attractive. Next is make it easy, right?
Yeah, because let's face it, there are distractions everywhere. If a habit takes too much effort, forget it. Clear talks about friction, those little things that make a habit harder.
Oh, there's so MOCH friction in the business world. Procrastination meetings, that one coworker. How do you actually reduce that friction?
One way is the 2-minute rule. Make the habit so small it takes 2 minutes or less. It's about overcoming that initial, ugh, I don't want a feeling.
So instead of write a business plan, which feels impossible, it's open my laptop and brainstorm for 2 minutes.
Exactly. That first step is the hardest. Once you start, you're more likely to keep going.
Oh, for sure. How many times have we put off a task because it felt huge? Then once you start, it's not so bad.
All the time. And the 2-minute rule works for anything. Instead of a 2-hour meeting, it's a 15-minute check-in. Instead of reorganizing your whole office, it's one drawer.
Yeah.
Small steps, but you do them consistently.
I like that. Making it so easy it becomes almost automatic. But what about breaking bad habits? Is there a 2-minute rule for that?
Not really. For bad habits, you want to do the opposite. Make them harder. Increase the friction.
So if I'm always on social media, use a website blocker or delete the apps. Make it harder to give in.
Exactly. Create obstacles. Clear talks about the invention of the cash register. Before that, shopkeepers had to track money manually, which made stealing easy. But the cash register made it physically impossible. Automated honesty, basically.
That's a good point. Sometimes the easiest way to not do something bad is to make it impossible to do in the first place. Okay, so we've got make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy. Finally, there's make it satisfying.
Right. This is key. Even if it's obvious, attractive, and easy, if it doesn't feel good, you'll quit.
And this is where our brains work against us, right? Instant gratification is so tempting. Checking social media feels better right now than, I don't know, working on your business plan, even if the plan will be better long term.
It's tough, but you can use that instant gratification to your advantage. Make the good habits satisfying immediately.
Okay, how do we do that? Let's hack our reward system.
It can be as simple as using a habit tracker. When you visually see your progress, those check marks, it feels good.
So build in those little celebrations, right? Even if it's just, woo, I did the thing.
Exactly. You acknowledge the win, and that keeps you going.
It's like a little self-5 every time, right?
Yeah.
Small wins, big victories.
That's it. And those small wins feel even better when you actually take the time to think about them. Clear's big on reviewing your habits, maybe every week or a month. Step back, look at what's working, what's not.
What gets measured gets managed, right?
Yeah.
Classic business advice.
Exactly. You can't just do the habits blindly. You got to track, analyze, make adjustments along the way. There's this cool example in the book about the LA Lakers, the basketball team.
Oh, yeah, I think I remember this one.
They had this program, Career Best Effort, and even their top players, these are like world-class athletes, right? They track everything, looking for tiny ways to improve, even when you're at the top. There's always room to grow.
It's that constant push for improvement, even for the best of the best, that makes the difference. Okay, so we've covered a lot. Small changes, identity, those 4 laws of behavior change. But before we wrap up, there's one more thing from Atomic Habits I want to hit. The zone of genius idea.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one, especially in business. Claire talks about this balance, right, between exploring and exploiting. Early on, it's all about exploring, trying new things, seeing what works. But then at some point, you got to shift to exploiting. Figure out your strengths, your zone of genius, and really focus there.
So less jack of all trades, more master of one.
Exactly. And knowing when to make that shift from exploring to exploiting, that's huge.
Makes sense. And this applies to habits too, right? Like experiment with different ones, see what fits you, what feels good, and then go all in on those.
Exactly. Play to your strengths. Find those habits that are in your sweet spot, the ones that really move the needle for you.
Awesome. So for everyone listening, feeling inspired, ready to take action, what's one thing they can do today to start building better habits, to get that atomic growth going?
Sometimes the simplest advice is the best. Pick one small habit, just one, and start tracking it. Could be anything. Drinking more water, a daily walk, reading for 15 minutes. Just start small, be consistent. Let those small wins motivate you.
Love it. Start small, stay consistent. It's not about these overnight makeovers. It's about the small stuff, done consistently. Those atomic changes that add up to big results.
Exactly. It's all about those small changes.
This has been so great. Atomic Habits is full of useful advice, and I know everyone listening is going to get a ton out of it.
For sure. It's a must-read.
Well, on that note, I think we'll wrap it up. If you enjoyed this deep dive on Atomic Habits and want to learn more, we've got a link to the book in the show notes. Go check it out. And as always, if you like the episode, please like, comment, and subscribe. Helps other people find the show. Until next time, keep those habits atomic.